Let me ask you something simple. When did birthdays stop feeling special? Not for everyone. Some people still post countdowns, throw parties, make it a whole event. But for others, they wake up, brush their teeth, go to work, like it's just Tuesday. No excitement, no plans, just another day passing by. But here's what nobody talks about. Why does one person feel alive on their birthday while another feels invisible? That difference? It's not about personality. It's about psychology, about pain, about what life quietly taught them to expect. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you won't just understand them, you might finally understand yourself. Some birthdays arrive like fireworks, loud, bright, impossible to ignore. And then there are birthdays that arrive like weather, quiet, a cup of coffee, a text or two. No banners, no staged smiles, just a day that belongs to no one in particular. And here's the thing, when someone treats their birthday like it's nothing, it's not because they don't care. It's because somewhere along the way they learned that caring too much hurts. So they stop announcing it. They don't post about it. They decline plans. They say they're just tired or too busy. Sometimes they turn off their phone for the day. Sometimes they sit alone at dinner and replay who texted, who didn't. The birthday becomes a test nobody asked them to take. Will someone remember without being reminded? Will a friend make that small gesture that proves they matter? Those silent experiments, they're not about vanity. They're about recognition, a raw human need to be seen. And for some people, joy became dangerous early on. A childhood with forgotten cakes, empty chairs, parties that felt like performances. So they learned a simple rule: expectation hurts. They lowered the lamp of hope until its glow was manageable. Over years, that became habit. The birthday stopped being special because the mind learned to survive with smaller doses of wonder. Then there's the people who learn to be the keepers of other people's moments. They remember anniversaries, they buy gifts early, they show up. But when it comes to their own day, they shrink. You see this all the time. The person who gives the most often receives the least. Not because the world is cruel, but because they never learned to ask. And layered on top of all this is the pressure of modern life. Work calendars, messages, an always available stream of obligations. Days blur together. Time stretches and compresses until the specialness of a date is swallowed by a to-do list. For some, the birthday is just another task in a life that taught them to prioritize survival over ceremony. Yet even within this quiet, an ache remains. People who tell themselves, "It's just another day," often confess in private spaces that they hoped for something else. The admission is small, embarrassing, like a child peeking from behind a curtain. They say, "I hoped someone would remember. I stopped expecting, but a little part still waits." This contradiction, the coexistence of self-protection and tender hope, is the human heart in miniature. So this is where it begins, not with judgment, but with attention. Listening to the small motions, the messages checked twice, the turned-down invitations, the quiet dinner for one. Noticing the pattern, the way birthdays become mirrors, reflecting how a person learned to expect from the world. And in that mirror, the reflection is complex, composed, guarded, sometimes wounded, and always quietly human.
There are beginnings that are loud and memorable. A cake lit under a chorus of voices, a photograph of wide eyes and confetti. And then there are beginnings that are quiet, formative, the soft moments that quietly teach a child how the world values them. Imagine a child who counts the hours until the doorbell rings and hears only silence. Imagine the chair at the table left empty, the cake cut for one. These aren't melodramatic tragedies. They're ordinary, repeated slights that register deep. Time and again, a child learns a shorthand. Expectation maps to hurt. This isn't a simple dislike of noise. It's the slow forming of a strategy to expect less in order to feel less pain. Psychologists have a name close to this, learned helplessness. But the phrase doesn't capture the tenderness of the experience. Learned helplessness is a mind's practical invention. When hopeful acts are met with neglect, hope becomes costly. The child who once waited for applause now waits for nothing. That blank becomes armor. Over years, the habit crystallizes. Birthdays, which once promised attention, become just dates, and attachment adds another layer. When love felt conditional, present sometimes, absent other times, given according to mood rather than steady intention, a child internalizes a script. I matter when convenient. That script shapes adulthood. The adult who treats their birthday like any other day may have been rehearsing survival strategies first learned in a room where emotional presence was uneven. Some early experiences are darker than neglect. There are people who remember blows and punishments for accidents at parties, who remember being sent away from celebrations as if joy were a dangerous transgression. For these individuals, birthdays aren't merely disappointing. They're reminders of vulnerability punished. The association isn't just about unreturned messages. It's about safety. Avoid the day, avoid harm. There's also the quieter lesson learned in families where performances were required. The child who was taught to smile through discomfort learns to script emotions. Festivals become obligations. Open gifts, smile, say thank you. The performance teaches that attention can be a burden. The child who felt watched rather than seen grows up to avoid the stage entirely. For them, a private dinner is relief. Public applause is anxiety. Another origin comes from cumulative experience rather than a single event, a series of almosts. Nearly remembered calls, belated messages, combined gifts for siblings. Each small oversight is a grain of sand. Over years, those grains fill a hollow where enthusiasm once lived. The result isn't cynicism. It's a careful economy of feeling. Less is risked, therefore less is lost. Culture and poverty leave marks too. When resources are scarce, celebration may feel extravagant or even wrong. Parents who themselves survived scarcity may prioritize survival rights over festival rights, teaching thrift and resilience, but unintentionally teaching children that their joy is non-essential. In these contexts, birthdays are practicalities, not privileges, and the child learns to internalize a different set of values. Gratitude without expectation. The invisible wound also meets the public mirror of social media. When celebrations become performative, the child who grows into an adult feels the weight of comparison. Watching others staged in continuous celebration reinforces the sense of absence. The heart learns to hide rather than to display need. None of this erases kindness that appears later. Some adults remember first gifts received in adulthood like light breaking through leaves, a partner who quietly sets a table, a friend who remembers without prompting. These acts can alter the map, but the origin stories matter because they explain the instinctive choices to shrink, to protect, to keep one's birthday small. There's a moment, subtle and almost invisible, when a person stops believing that their birthday is a celebration of them and begins seeing it as a test of who remembers, who shows up, who cares. Psychology has a name for what forms here: emotional conditioning, the invisible shaping of expectations based on repeated emotional outcomes. Humans are wired for meaning. Even small rituals become emotional markers. Birthdays, in particular, sit at the intersection of identity and connection. They remind a person not just of when they were born, but of how they are held. When attention becomes unpredictable, the brain shifts into a protective mode. Neuroscientists call this anticipatory regulation, lowering emotional investment to avoid emotional pain. In many adults who treat their birthday like a normal day, you can see the traces of this regulation. Not dramatic, not bitter, just careful. Here's how the mind adapts. 1. Expectation management. The mind learns patterns. If past birthdays were disappointing, the brain adjusts future expectations downward. It's efficient. It prevents the emotional crash of unmet hope. This isn't pessimism. It's emotional math. Over enough time, it's just another day becomes a truth that protects them. 2. The spotlight effect. For people who feel uneasy under attention, birthdays feel like an exam they didn't ask to take. They fear being judged for how they react, what they receive, or how grateful they appear. The celebration becomes a performance instead of comfort, so they opt out. Silence is easier than the pressure of being seen. 3. Self-concept. A person's identity forms from the messages they absorbed growing up. If they internalize the idea that they are low maintenance, unimportant, or too much when they ask for things, then celebrating themselves feels unnatural. Their sense of self doesn't align with the idea of taking up space. Psychologists call this an incongruent self-image, when the way they see themselves conflicts with what the world says they should feel. 4. Avoidant attachment. Those with avoidant attachment tendencies may associate closeness with vulnerability. Birthdays create opportunities for intimacy, receiving gifts, being appreciated, being emotionally visible. For avoidant individuals, this visibility feels risky. Their instinct is to withdraw, not because they dislike affection, but because affection reminds them of past emotional breaches. So they simplify the day, minimize it, flatten it, not out of coldness, but out of self-preservation. 5. Emotional neutrality as a coping strategy. Neuroscience shows that when emotions swing too sharply, joy turning to disappointment, the brain sometimes learns to reduce the entire spectrum. This is called emotional dampening. It's like putting a filter over your feelings to avoid the extremes. Birthdays, which naturally invite highs, also carry the risk of lows. So the person chooses neutrality, predictability, a day without emotional volatility. 6. Social comparison. In an age where celebrations are publicly displayed, people subconsciously measure their lives against curated digital moments. If their birthday feels smaller, quieter, less cinematic, it can trigger feelings of inadequacy. To avoid the comparison spiral, some people detach entirely from the ritual. Better no celebration than one that feels insufficient. Here's what psychology reveals again and again. These individuals often feel two simultaneous truths. They don't want attention, but they also don't want to be forgotten. They don't want a party, but they secretly hope someone remembers. They want the day to be simple, but they also want it to mean something. This internal conflict is known as ambivalent desire, wanting and not wanting the same thing, born from experiences that taught them to mistrust their own needs. They are not emotionless. They are not detached. They are balancing longing with self-protection. A birthday quietly reveals how a person relates to their past, their self-worth, their expectations, their emotional boundaries, their ability to receive. Psychology doesn't reduce this behavior to fear or insecurity. It recognizes it as a sophisticated emotional strategy, a way of navigating life with minimal bruising. Some people celebrate with noise because they feel safe in it. Others celebrate quietly because safety for them has always lived in quiet places.
So here's what all of this tells us. When you meet someone who treats their birthday like just another day, you're not looking at someone who's cold, or detached, or emotionless. You're looking at someone whose heart learned to protect itself. Someone who figured out, quietly, that survival sometimes means lowering your expectations before they lower you. And here's the paradox. The people who say, "I don't care about my birthday," often care the most. They're the ones who notice everything, who feel deeply, who replay the day in their mind later, checking who remembered, who didn't. They just learned somewhere along the way that it was safer to stay silent, safer to pretend, safer to call it just another day than to admit they hoped for something more. But beneath that calm surface, there's still a whisper, a small, tender part of them that says, "I wish someone would remember without me asking. I wish someone would see me without me having to perform. I wish I didn't have to protect myself like this." And if that's you, if you've ever felt this way on your birthday, know this: there's nothing broken about you. You're not ungrateful. You're not numb. You're just someone who learned that hope, when it's been disappointed too many times, becomes expensive. So you save it, you ration it, you keep it small. But here's the truth they don't tell you. You still deserve to be celebrated. Not because of what you've achieved, not because you earned it, but simply because you're here. Because you made it through another year. Because your existence, quiet as it may feel, still matters. So maybe this year, or next year, or the year after that, you don't have to throw a party. You don't have to post about it. You don't have to make noise. But maybe, just maybe, you can whisper to yourself, "Hey, I see you. We made it another year." Because that's the kind of celebration that doesn't fade when the candles go out. That's the kind that stays with you. And that's the kind you've always deserved, even on the days that feel ordinary, especially then.